recently, in recent editions which have referred to certain sightings in Australia, I've detected quite a bit of exaggeration and a lot of misquoting. In the last APRO bulletin, which incidentally published my photograph, round the wrong way as a matter of fact, there were several reports emanating from Australia. I've got the APRO bulletin in front of me now. There was one particular report which emanated from the Westall High School. I don't know whether you're familiar with this report, but the science master there, two other members of staff, and about 300 children watched a UFO manoeuvring around over Westall, and at the same time watched 5 aeroplanes from the local aero club doing everything they could to intercept the UFO. Now, in the APRO bulletin, it's headed, "Officials Quash School Sighting." Well, it may be coincidence or one of these lucky things, but my brother-in-law is on the committee of the Australian Light Car Club, and the science master who was one of the key witnesses in this sighting is also in the Light Car Club as a member, and I managed to arrange with my brother-in-law to get this particular chap to come over to my house and discuss the sighting with me. It was very interesting indeed, and he read this report in APRO bulletin and said that most of the so-called facts mentioned in it were incorrect. There was no question of officials quashing the sighting, as it was put by APRO. The person behind the sort of close down on this particular sighting was the headmaster, who was so scared or disturbed by the whole thing, he refused to go outside into the schoolyard, even when told the object was in the sky. When the Air Force contacted the headmaster, he told them in his exact words, which were, "Go and jump in the lake." Now, this science master told me a great deal about this sighting. It was certainly a fascinating one. It was rather unfortunate that the facts when they were sent over to APRO were rather distorted, and this has led me to think at this stage anyway that it may be that Carol Lawrenson hasn't obtained the correct information from the eastern states, as I felt quite sure that NICAP would wait until the CSIRO report came through. Anyway, to go on with this sighting, I think this is more interesting than worrying about the photographers at this stage anyway. Greenwood, that was the name of the science master, told me that the UFO was first brought to his attention by a rather hysterical child who ran into his classroom and said there's a flying saucer outside. Anyway, he thought this child had become deranged or something, or was ill, and he didn't take immediate notice, but when the child insisted that this object was in the sky, he decided to go out and have a look for himself. He went out into the yard. Oh, incidentally, this occurred on the 7th of April. It was only a few days after I took that photograph. He went out into the yard and he couldn't see anything, and he noticed some other children who had been in a physical education class outside, down at the bottom of the schoolyard, looking towards the northeast. Anyway, he ran over to this group of children, and there he saw the UFO for the first time. It was evidently hovering very closely to the high-tension power lines which enter Melbourne from the Latrobe Valley and come through Westall and Moorabbin, where the Aero Club is. He watched it there, and he said it was a bright silver object about the size of a car, and resembled to him a bar just floating in the air, a sort of rod. I think this was probably a disc seen from the edge. Anyway, it then rose up, and at this point he noticed a light plane, probably a Cessna or a Piper Cub, moving in towards it. It just sat there about 1,000 feet up, and he said about 2,000 feet from where he was standing. At this stage he was joined by more children and the physical education teacher who watched this. And then, evidently, the pilot of the first light plane had radioed other planes in the air, and they all converged, that is, 4 others converged on the disk or object. Then he said the most amazing flying he'd ever seen in his life commenced in the sky. The planes were doing everything possible to approach this object, and he said how there wasn't an aerial collision and a serious accident he'll never know, but they were literally turning around in the sky, and every time they got very close to the object it would slowly accelerate and then rapidly accelerate and move away from them and then stop, and then they would take off after it again, and the same thing would happen, it would come back again. Anyway, this went on for 20 minutes, and by this time there was something like 350 odd people, children and staff members of the school, watching this scene. Then the thing just shot away. Obviously, in his opinion, got sick of this game of cat and mouse which was going on in the air. And by this time the headmaster had come out. He probably noticed that the thing had gone, or somebody had told him so. And the headmaster came out and demanded everybody's attention and told them to return to their classes at once, which they did. He then gave the school a lecture, I believe, and told the children that they'd be severely punished if they talked about this matter, and told the staff that they could lose their jobs if they mentioned it at all. This, of course, appalled Greenwood, who was rather upset at this, as he's a very well-educated person. He's got about 3 university degrees, and up to the time of seeing this UFO, he was a complete skeptic himself. He'd never even considered the possibility of their existence. And of course, this reformation had taken place in these few minutes of his sighting, and he was rather annoyed with the headmaster altogether. One rather amusing thing was that the headmaster did tell the Air Force to jump in the lake when they rang later in the day. Anyway, another strange thing which came out of this case was that when he asked the physical education teacher to describe what she had seen herself in detail so that he could compare it with his own observations, she just wouldn't say anything. And when I mean she wouldn't say anything, she just wouldn't utter a word. And this rather puzzled him. He doesn't think it had anything to do with the headmaster's idle threats, as nobody in the school took them very seriously. He also talked with one of the other witnesses, one of the older children who saw this object, and at first the girl concerned told him the full story and very accurately described the object, and it matched his own description very closely. But then, half an hour later, when he asked her again, and incidentally she had not heard any of the threats the headmaster had made because she'd gone home to tell her mother. Also the same thing happened. She wouldn't say anything. And this is rather puzzling to Greenwood, and it's certainly puzzling to me. Anyway, that's the Westall sighting. I don't know whether you know about it. It wasn't published in any of the papers except for one very small local paper in a place called Dandenong near Melbourne. It was a very good sighting indeed. The object, when compared with the aircraft, was about half the length of the Cessna. It was obviously a small object, and according to Greenwood, was definitely under some form of intelligent